Isis becomes like a thing. Well, if you didn't know, I'm here with one of my favorite people in the world, Giant, and he's got a part of a presentation that we're hoping he could show because he got through part of it, and then I brought on Noel, and then it was amazing. It was just a lot of like, let's study and ask questions about what we saw so far, and I really want to do that again with this video. So we're going to record this second part, and then everyone can analyze it, and then we can move on with more questions from that, because I think that's the best way to look at stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of a David Ewing call out. Yes.
Oh, also just really want to say yes, right? Yes. Rad Data 4. I just want to shout out Rad Data 4 because he's super based. He's super rad.
Dads are the best, man. You got to be
It's
a rad
true.
dad, especially nowadays, right? There's
You got to be a radical fatherhood is an ideology, you know?
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Exactly. If you're going to be a dad, you got to be a rad dad, because right now, if not, you're failing. And
yeah, sure.
Fertility's failing. So I'm glad Rad Dad's here to listen in. Yeah. So
yes. He says yes.
Yeah, I say a lot of right. And
right.
I guess in England they say a lot of yes. They got better voice than us just because of the accent, right? My voice would sound better in that accent, but it sounds like shit. Like I've said before, you know, I gotta.
You think in British you would sound better? It depends on the trauma you experience from British. So, like, if for me, I don't hear intelligence when I hear a British accent, right? Like, I maybe hear the school they went to, and I say, "Oh, that's a nice school." But for the most part, when I hear a British accent, my thought is, "Oh, great, this person wants to sell blenders in the Caribbean to restaurants," or "Oh, great, this person wants to sell me Orbit's gum," or "Oh, great," you know what I mean? Like, I don't have that. Like, oh, British people, you read books. Like, I come from a place where they have books, you know, so I just don't.
They get away with it, but sometimes I practice in the mirror with my English accent, and I feel like I sound better, but I also feel like I sound better when I speak, period. And then when I hear myself back, then I'm like, holy shit, dude, what the fuck?
Well, that's how I feel about myself. I can't listen to myself either.
Yeah, I think we all do, right? It makes it hard. There's a lot of movie guys out there that don't want to watch themselves and their movies.
It's true. That's true. Yeah, I just started watching a bunch of the Johnny Depp movies. The Boy Who Cried, about like a pogrom Russian boy who survives and meets a gypsy girl in like in early 20th or late 19th century New York. And you're looking for any one of these things, Johnny Depp will never know exactly how the whole movie works out, because all he knows is the parts he recorded. Because I think he saw Edward Scissorhands once. That was like, he's never wanted to see himself in a movie. Sees himself and gets him. Tim Burton convinces him to see himself in Edward Scissorhands, and then he's just like, "No, I don't want to ever watch myself in a movie again."
Yeah, weird, right? I think Nicolas Cage too. There's been a few actors where they say that they're like, "I can't watch myself do it. Like, I won't go and watch myself. I'm not into myself that much, you know." So interesting.
I feel that
paradigm, right? So
wanting
to watch them, but they don't want to watch themselves.
I mean, it's kind of weird to listen to my. I don't want to listen to my own music that much, even unless if I'm like, my own voice is in it. Like, I like to listen to music I make, but the idea of listening to yourself, even like, imagine I've had a friend who was in a band, and then he would bring over girls, and then he would play his album, and just do that over and over again. And I was like, that's like crazy, you know what I mean? Like, because you're like listening to yourself.
Like, egotistical, right?
Right.
What was the birthday of that guy?
Oh man,
usually fire sign. They like.
He was I have to remember now because this was a long time ago. I want to say, I don't know. I have to check it out. I have to think about it. I'm curious myself. I forget.
Yeah, there's certain dynamics I feel that you find in astrology where characteristics come out like that. Like Leos tend to like to, be famous, be the face of things, right? So, it's also just a fire sign thing across the board, but you'll also find placements in everybody's sign where it's more fiery, where you'll get that characteristic where they're more interested in themselves than other people, like to hear themselves talk. But
yeah, I seen a lot of that with like like Capricorns and all that too. But no, I was thinking he was a Scorpio, and I think he is. Yeah, he totally is. November 22nd.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, actually, that's Sag. So there you go.
Right.
There's a fire.
Right on that cusp there. I was
Right.
thinking about Scorpio tonight because I had a really good luck with my Chernobyl short story video. It's got like 14,000 views in the last, like 10,000, 12,000 extra views in the last week. And I was wondering like what happened with that video? Why who's interested in Chernobyl all of a sudden? And I don't know. I don't know exactly. I haven't figured out like if it was shared somewhere. I assume that's probably why, like in some sort of a like
How was the
forum.
title?
It's Chernobyl. It's called Obelisk 23. That's the other thing. It doesn't even. It's so like low key of a title. I don't think it even has. Let me see. Obelisk. Yeah. No. Okay. The title does make it kind of clear. Hold on. Let me pull up the presentation, like the screen, so you can see it for a second. There we go. Here. So I made this video using a bunch of like, news footage. And then I have my friend Alyosha Toplak reading in his accent my short story. Because this was before AI could make it like that much better. I was like, hey, make it more authentic with actual people, have a Slavic accent person read my story and have this whole kind of, it's not even that. It's like an immersive experience. This is like some of the earliest AI that I was doing, right? So you can see it's actually kind of interesting that I don't know, looking back at it now, because I made this like 2 years ago, and AI is so different now too. But it's mostly just me telling this story about a boy growing up in Pripyat and trying to find his place right as Chernobyl is starting to happen. So I just thought that's kind of random that all of a sudden it's gotten some play, and I wonder if there's reason for that. I know people have been talking about Microsoft TMI turning on the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor again, so that they can have enough energy for AI, because AI is using so much energy. And we haven't done this before because people were just willing to pay for energy. But now it makes so much sense if we're going to need to use 10 times as much energy to just turn nukes back on, right? So this is where that's going. But it reminded me of Chernobyl. And so I posted earlier this evening some Zodiac tidbits. Let me see here.
How many views was that you got really fast?
Like 10 or 11,000. So
and it happened over a few days?
Over like a week. Yeah.
Okay. And you
didn't I didn't even notice it at first, because it was like happening, because I have like 1,000 videos. So like when this video was going up, it was like I got so many other videos, I didn't see it until all of a sudden it was like rising. It's like, oh, okay. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And so I posted this thing because I was like, who's watching it? And like not even very many like comments on it. I was like, I don't know. April 26, 1986, the nuclear eclipse, Pluto in Scorpio, Saturn in Sagittarius, Mars conjunct Neptune in Capricorn, Jupiter in Pisces, and Moon in Cancer, the ruler of the eclipse. Joan Quigley might call this the ideal date if you're into that sort of thing. So I kind of wanted to push this other Chernobyl video, which talks literally about like the astrology of Joan Quigley and Ronald Reagan making Chernobyl happen, right? And why Chernobyl was not an accident by any means, and it was in the stars, at very least, right? But it was controlled and orchestrated with people falling out of the skies and taking over the identities of Soviets, right, from the United States. This is a lot. It's one of the craziest Mission Impossible stories of all time, really, is what happened with Chernobyl. But yeah, just on the subject of stars.
Yep. Yeah, so I wanted to go in a little bit earlier. You had David Ewing on, and he was talking about the 19 connection.
Right.
Which
seems to be a huge deal, like the lunar calendar. Yeah,
Yeah, so the lunar calendar ties in. So the moon and the sun are like, in a way, a microcosm or a macrocosm of Saturn and Jupiter. They play the same role in a way, but a distant role. So there's a great conjunction that happens between Jupiter and Saturn. This is something that I connected with you on years ago, right before 2020, where I was saying there's going to be a great event, and it's going to be related to something that's going to be have to do with chemistry or you know, technically virology. I didn't get into the details because I don't know. You know, I just look at it as this repeating pattern that's been calculated over time. I don't know exactly what we got into. I called in on what was it? It was on Discord that I called in, and we were talking about it going into it a little bit before COVID broke out and all that stuff. So I knew something was going to happen at least because of this conjunction, and it's always a judgment.
Right. So there was a there was a thing that's like 2005 is the tsunami, which was a much more important thing than people actually realize, right? Like, so the tsunami in 2005, and also isn't that Katrina? Let me remind myself when Katrina happened in 2005 as well, right? Okay, so 2005 is a very important astrological, and in terms of weather, in terms of environmental shift, that's a way I think of, you know, how important something is even just here, right, on a more concrete level. And so you have the destruction of things, but you also have there's a lot of conspiracies about common waters programs for mining and everything, where they have releases of volcanoes or pressures for the purposes of extracting minerals, and how that can be used to completely destroy coastal regions, because you collapse a place, it creates this vacuum, the water's then pushed forward, and then of course you get this giant tidal wave that's 30 meters tall, right? And this is something that we've seen happen a lot, but people said, no, that would be crazy that anyone would find like some sort of a place where water has been pushing into, purposefully collapse the cave mine, forcing water out, millions and maybe hundreds of millions of gallons of water towards places like Indonesia, right? And so this stuff all these things that happened 19 years ago, it's interesting to think about them, right?
Yeah, and what it is you want to track event to event. So the fact that these things will happen in 20-year cycles are connected to, there's a pattern, just like Chinese astrology has years that are associated with different animals, right? So right now
that was the other thing, is the 12-year cycle. So 19 is important, and we're going to go into that. But just the idea of the zodiac, Chinese zodiacs in 12-year cycles. So if you think about it, 2024 to 2012, this is really an important. This would be in a historically in a normal linear reality. This would be a cycle, right? But of course, we don't know exactly what to say after 2012.
Yes, yeah, you'll start having like hydrologic issues when it's associated with things that are deal with water and stuff like that. So right now we're in a dragon year, which is very hydrologic. So, you know, we just seen a disaster with Helena and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different patterns that you have to start looking at, and you'll connect in and you'll see, okay, this is why the judgment or destruction happened in this way. But
however, Helena is doing really well with pop music right now, so everyone go buy Helena's new album. You know, of course, random synchronicity there.
It's all from Saturn in her album, but that's
yeah,
it's pretty common to see a lot of these
planetary. Pretty common. Pretty common, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you got Venus, you got Saturn, you got all kinds of things. But yeah, so every 19 years, you're having a judgment period that happens when Saturn and Jupiter come into conjunction, or they're coming close to conjunction. So it's between this kind of 18 and a half to 20-year period. And the reason why it changes a little bit is because there's the precession of the equinox, and there's a slipping that happens.
And what do we call that? We call that the pretty good conjunction or something like that. What's it called? The great
conjunction. And then there's also a grand or greatest conjunction. So there's these great conjunctions that happen every 20 years. And then there's the greatest conjunction when it finally shifts into another sign. So for 200 years, we had this great conjunction happen in Earth signs, and that's when all of our presidents got assassinated or presidents died in office, were during these great conjunctions. And then it slipped into from Virgo to Libra in 1981. So when that conjunction slipped, they tried to assassinate Reagan, but it didn't work. And then they ended up starting assassinating, uh, you know, people that are in the media and stuff like that. And they got John Lennon, and he was a Libra, and then he was assassinated in, I believe, Sagittarius. So it starts changing once that conjunction, that grand or greatest conjunction, mutates. It's called a mutation. When that mutation happens, that means that there's a whole new set of parameters. So these aeons, like I've been speaking about before, are showing you that there's a whole new parameter for a 2,000 year period and also a 26,000 year period. But then when these 200-year periods happen, they're also doing like a reset. So there's these constant resets that are happening in a micro and macro way.
Right.
And then they kick off different types of interactions that are going to happen, different judgments that are going to happen in different ways in society that are going to come right afterwards. So you'll have, you know, when the great conjunction happens, that's when the judgment is being basically kind of worked out between Jupiter and Saturn, and then the unfolding starts happening right after that, right?
I was trying to find a picture to show that, you know, because this is again why the Egyptian and the Mayan calendar 2019 is kind of funny, because 20 and 19, you really have this idea of like 13 and 20, because you have 19 and 12. So the 12 that are, you have 0 and 12, and you have 19 and 0. But you have like that repeating loop, which is interesting also because then you have the 7 cycle, the 12 cycle, and they all conjunct with that 19, because there's a cycle. I mean, granted, there's, like you said, an even bigger cycle where things are fully conjunct.
Yeah, it's all
But
about cycles and about judgment periods and
when
reaping
they
that
when they
happen.
frequency, when like maybe a 12-year cycle can coincides with a 7-year cycle and a 19-year cycle, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you start looking
More
at these
syncs.
cycles and when they hit, you're going to get more extreme kind of outcomes and varied ways of that the judgments are going to happen
More
depending
syncs
on
come
where
with
they're
more
at.
coincidences.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, if you have uh very water, because of the elements, right? So if you have very water like things, then it might all just be water related, and then it'll just be large water events. If you have fire elements, also water, then you'll get a little bit of fire, a little bit of water, a little bit of earth. So there's going to be elemental scenarios unfolding just depending on these alignments and what it is that our judgment is, right? So the better, I believe, the better we get at not allowing the judgment to be a negative one because we're doing the right things, we get better outcomes, and we can avoid a lot of these things. And these people that are in positions that are considered elites or whatever, they're the judgment characters. A lot of them are reapers. And that's what people need to take into consideration, is that God created a faction or an energetic force that is there to give us the pressure or give us the judgment, just like we have judges in our society and we have police officers and all these things, right? That's a necessary component to existence. Or you're going to get characters that will just, take control of everything and just completely take over and take advantage of people. So
Totally.
you don't want that sort of society. You don't want that sort of outcome in
It's crazy
existence.
how many people just want to not see what's going on. I think that's a bigger. I don't know if this is like a horrible pun, but to be a not see-er, you know what I mean? Like that's a lot of what I see a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of people that want to bury their head in the sand and don't really want to recognize that this world is going to be dualistic, that it to get the benefits of this world and to continue those benefits, you have to work for it and you have to structure things correctly. You can't just hope that the best outcome is going to happen because you pray to God. God isn't looking for prayers. God's looking for people that are doers, right? And not just hopers, right? You're praying to yourself technically, and you're trying to get answers on how is it that you overcome the situation. You're not getting miracles that happen. Those are what real coincidences are, is if something happens and it just happens in your favor on accident, that is somewhat to do with God just trying to help other people out, and you just happen to be a benefactor of that situation. Kind of like white people are kind of a benefactor in a way of the situation that other white people have perpetuated, right? And the same thing with any kind of condition in any place that you're in. You go to India, they're a benefactor of their own people's work and stuff like that. They're not going to really see you as a benefactor. You're not going to get all the benefits of that society and fairness and stuff if you do things there, right? And that's going to be across the board. It doesn't matter what place or what rule set you're in. The people are going to see each other as uh, you know benefits that are connected to them. That's always going to be. Um, but yeah, we're looking at something that is. You wanted to put up this presentation.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry also if I didn't let you complete any thought about 19. I feel like that was my fault. But I was like, hey.
No, what I wanted to go into, actually, let me go back to. I wanted to go into. I'm sure people have probably heard of it, but is it showing my screen right now?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So this grand conjunction, or this great conjunction.
Oh, what I'm seeing right now is just the presentation. Is that correct? The hieroglyphic with the ka. Is that correct?
No, I just went. Okay, so it's not sharing my screen.
No, it's only showing the window of the presentation. So if you want to share your screen, you might want to unshare and then present that window and then switch windows again.
Okay, so
or drag it into your presentation.
That'll work if I drag it into the presentation.
Sometimes it works on a Mac.
All right, let me unshare this real fast.
Okay.
Well, anyways, I'll just go off of what's here. So, the Ka, I think he mentioned the Ka, David Ewing, right? So
he did. Yeah, it did come up.
Okay, so I just wanted to show some hieroglyphics of the Ka, which is this, arm thing, right? It's raising your arm, almost like a goalpost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's showing a gate in a way, or a goalpost. And then there, on this hieroglyphic, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Here? Yeah, so it's showing another one, right? So it's kind of showing that there's two gates, right? And then there's the feather, right? Your heart has got to be as light as a feather to get through these gates of the Ka, right?
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of arm stuff, but also this like crook sort of symbology that's embedded in a lot of Egyptian stuff. It's embedded across the board, even into Hinduism, which is showing how to connect these gates. So here's one of a Bijit where it's showing this cross, right, and like a crook. And can you see it? You can see the presentation.
Interesting, right? Yeah.
So this is the Abhijit Nakshatra, and this is the constellation. So there's stars here. So I spoke about Abhijit last time on the last presentation, which is the hidden Nakshatra, or the 22nd lunar mansion out of the 28. But it's fit in there, so it's not always the 22nd. The 22nd is sometimes Uttara Ashada, right? And these nakshatras, if I can go down, let's see, are Purvashada. So there's another cross, right? And then like the hands up and crossed out. So the symbology behind it is that this isn't the open gate, but or this is Pusha. My bad. Hold on 1 second. Let's see. Do I have Uttarashada?
So it's interesting because this is kind of inferring that they're related to where the star patterns are, even in their calligraphy.
Yeah, so Pusha is actually in Cancer. So both of
Wow.
these, yeah, both of these are across from each other. There's basically 3 nakshatras, 2.5 nakshatras that are on each side of this gate. And because I don't have this in order, I don't know where it's at. But anyways, here's Punarvasu. And Punarvasu is related to the beginning of Cancer, as you can see in the diagram here. It's actually pointed at Cancer, and this is Aditi or Ditya, and she is the goddess. She is the matrix or the goddess of all. She's like the grandmother of everything. So Vishnu dreamed into her, and she is the like a vas. That this is where I believe we got the word vase from, is that she is the Vasu. She is the vase or the thing that he put his essence into. She holds
Right.
within her the whole universe, and she is the darkness and all that stuff. The great womb of life is the Punarvasu, and it ends at um, uh, Gemini and begins at Cancer, classically, right? So they move it. Depends on what system you're following, because the Vedic system isn't precise, and they've changed it multiple times over the years. And some people follow that positioning a little bit askew, and we can get into that, like who and why it is that they follow it differently.
There's also kind of I mean, Punar Vasu kind of means like renewed goodness or something to that effect, right? So you could kind of also associate this with the ascension incarnation process, like that you fill the breath into the vessel, it betters the vessel and it betters the spirit. They integrate, and then a new incarnation occurs, and this continues the process of ascension either to apotheosis or back to apokatastasis, where you return to the source.
Yep. And that's what she does is she has a quiver, and she pulls an arrow out and she shoots it. And that's why they have the bow and arrow, and it moves its way around the zodiac, and it comes back. She grabs the arrow and puts it back into her quiver. And then she does it over and over again. So she's the great mother that starts out. So the Dityas are her children, and there's 12 of them, and that's all the sun gods. And so that's each zodiac station is all of her children. And one of her main children is sorry, I'm having a brain fart here. Uh, uh,
There are a lot of gods in a lot of their names.
well, yeah, but he's a very specific one, and I can't remember the name, but it has to do with the Zoroastrian religion. Um,
Let's
anyway,
see.
it's not that important at this point, but anyway, yeah, she has 12 children, and they're all different sun stations, which is the zodiac, and then it comes back. She's also, um, if you look at the 9-month period, she's the mother of Aries, right? So then before things start and they start at Aries, they have to start with her first. And then
Which one were you associating? So, like, okay, so I got a list of them really quick if you want.
Mithra. There you go. It's Mithra.
Okay.
Mitra. So it's
Mitra, the deity of friendship, contracts, and harmony. Yeah.
yeah, yep. So her main child is Mitra. So she's trying to create Mithra, right? This is where Mithraism and all this stuff comes from.
Really interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and her first daughter is the Earth, is Mother Earth, and so Mother Earth is created 9 months away from her, which is Aries, and then her first grandchild, which is the sun that she's trying to create, Mitra, is 9 months away from that, which is Capricorn, and then 9 months away from that is Libra. So those are the cardinal signs. So she had to birth with Brahma, essentially, or Vishnu, the cardinal signs first, and then from there they created offspring that became the other stations, right?
Hmm.
So so her first male offspring was Mitra, but the first female offspring is Aries. And then
Makes sense.
you get this feminine character that comes out in Aries that is Virago, right? I think we spoke about this before. This Virago character. If you look up Virago,
Uh,
Virago.
Virago, I don't remember, but let me pull it up. Is a woman who demonstrates masculinity or masculine power. I mean, this is essentially all of the Roman goddesses or the Greco goddesses, But here is a Virago virtue, masculine, abundant masculine virtue, from the Latin word virago, genitive viraginus, meaning vigorous maiden, from vir meaning man or manlike, to which the suffix ago is added to create a noun, thus declension with feminine grammatical gender. Okay.
Yeah. So this is where you get this. It's a hybrid character that can give birth to itself over and over again, but then also eventually gives birth to a male, right? So it didn't need a male at first, or at least it couldn't produce a male at first, and it had to figure out how to give birth to a male. So it had masculine and feminine form of it, in it within itself. So it was a warrior princess, a warrior goddess, right? So this is where you get this warrior goddess story, and this is why Mary
Gotcha.
had this birth, right? And also Califia, California, and everything had this birth. They don't always birth the male. It just happens every once in a while, and then it
So
became
kind of like the Amazons, or some of
yeah,
those other,
exactly.
Vice-Fraus and all that. Okay.
Yep. All these stories are just based off of this mythology, off of this understanding of how the Matrix or chaos created a more stable being, or
Skaldmare.
something that can perfect itself over time, because the being by itself that just makes itself can never get refined. It just keeps on producing the same thing over and over again. So to get the being to have more interactions and then evolve from those interactions, you have to have a male and a female, right? And so over time, that would, get all these different um, elements to the evolution of those different characters, and then it would bring itself back together, and then it would be more dynamic. It would have all the different weapons that it needed, all the different evolved pieces that it needed to be able to deal with this world, right? If you're going into a new world and you don't know what it takes to go in there, you have to be able to evolve, and you can't do that as a single entity. But eventually, it looks like a lot of creatures in this world, like there's, reptiles and stuff like that, that have evolved to eventually become adapted perfectly to their environment, and then they go back to being this androgynous character.
Right. Yeah. I mean, reptiles become birds and back again. It's crazy what reptiles do.
Yeah, so this kind of shows that they knew at very least that there's a cycle like that that happens. So this Punarvasu means a lot of this stuff in many ways. It's showing that it starts off just creating a character that's hermaphroditic, and then it turns into something that produces male and female. They start picking up all kinds of adaptabilities across the board. Then it comes back again to the, you know, Punarvasu, back to the sheath, and then it can start over again and refine even more. At least that's the way that it looks like it's being explained, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Also, I mean, I like that. So someone was saying that it could be interpreted as both ways. Puna, for, I don't know if they were joking or if they were literally talking about that point, that it's either a return to or a renewing of. And I think that's a huge deal, right? Like that's kind of the emphasis point. Like it's not necessarily like um of becoming a new thing, it could also just be a return to the origin. And so the fact that it can be both, I think, is also an important point, that they are both, probably.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, you know, if you look at these dynamics, and there's a lot of different, you know, you have to understand these nakshatras, you have to understand these stories and the symbology behind it and the constellations. You'll see that over and over again, it all is pointing that out. It's saying this is the place that's the return to. This is the place that you get to the end of the cycle, right? So you'll notice there's a theme to what I'm trying to point out here, is that it's connected to that. So Cancer clicking into this Milky Way is showing that this is the return of the arrow. And so again,
all I was seeing here is a black screen. Is this intentional? Because all I see is a black page here.
Yeah, well, I think there's a video here.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just gonna try to play just to see if it reminds me of why. I don't think I can play it. So maybe this was a video I took out or something, because it does say 0 minutes. All right.
Okay.
All right. So then there's Pusha, and you know, I'll go through a lot of these pretty quickly, because these are things that will go in depth once it matters more, because it doesn't matter at this point.
But decent little outline's good, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then let's see, this one. Let me see if I can play this. I'll just play it really shortly. Is that okay? If it does play. I don't think
I think it should be fine. I don't know what the video is. Like, if we get in trouble, we'll cut it out later.
Yeah, well, it won't let me play it anyways.
Okay.
I think in this setting I can't play it. I have to put it into the presentation mode. Okay, so this is about Artha, so this is probably related to that. I'm just going to go through these real quick, because we'll get back to them, and there's so much information that I don't really want to like dive down those holes, you know. When we get to it and it is more prevalent to what we're talking about, then it'll make more sense. So yeah, so there's this cow thing that's across the board, and that's a little bit of what this section is meant to go into, is that
Right.
that the elephant is also a cow, right? Like when you look up how do you refer to an elephant, it's a bull and a cow, the female and the male, right? And you can even see that this Pusha nakshatra, it looks like a cow with horns and everything. It looks kind of like a cow head. And then in the Hindu stuff, they're riding this cow. All right, it's very important, but it's not important at this point. So this will go into how this is related to the cow and Aditya's months and days, and you know, milk cow, you know, cows produce the milk and all that stuff. So it starts at exactly 180 days, or about halfway in the 365 days of the year. You start Cancer at pretty much the 180th day, but you have that 5-day period that was created by Thoth. We went into previous videos. See, there's a lot of details that I put in here where it's not gonna really make sense, but this shows.
Well, I think we should go back into this later with Noel, because I'm gonna have some questions. I still don't want to interrupt you, but like, I mean, there are definitely thoughts I have about elephants versus cows in the Rig Veda. I just want to make sure that I don't stop the story.
No,
you know?
Yeah, no, because there's multiple animals, but you know, one of the big ones that they use the same lingo for is cows and elephants, right? So the male elephant is a bull, right? I mean, you can look it up on the internet. You know, it's all.
It's just true. I mean, the Arivata, though, is the idea that there was like out of the seas came the elephants, which is kind of an interesting origin story that they have, like out of the churning of the waves. But I don't know. I'd like to. I don't want to. We can do that with Noel. I want to let you just present for now.
Yep. yeah, so yeah, we'll get back to all that stuff. See, this is the problem is I don't have this stuff in order to kind of show. This is going into this uh Capricorn sign, right? And how it's related to uh Aries and Taurus. So
Interesting.
the yeah, in the Christmas song about the uh 12 days of Christmas, they talk about, or no, the drummer boy, it talks about how the lamb and the bull keep time, or the ox keep time, right? And so your two Saturn characters, where Saturn rules the zodiac, is in Capricorn and Aquarius, right? And they're conceived 9 months earlier in Aries and Taurus. And so when you put them together, you put Aries and Taurus together, you get this symbol, which is a Saturn symbol, right? So the reason behind that is because Saturn is the timekeeper, and this is what um, Aditya was trying to create, right?
Wow.
She was
Wow.
she was trying to create time. You can't create time without having
Con-
divisions,
and
without slice.
space conjunction.
Yes, you have to slice things up. And so she knew she had to make her daughter first, which was Aries, and then her daughter had to split, basically like twin herself in a way, and make a masculine form. And this is why her name is Mary, is because it's Mars, a masculine warlike character, right, that wants to divide things or cause conflict, and then there's interaction, and then splits, and then makes another character, and this is where the Y comes out of it, right? And that's another Venus aspect. And so you have Taurus and Aries, which are basically the two lobes of the brain, or two lobes of the head, or it depends on the system that you're talking about and who's talking about it, but it's basically the head and the mouth, or whatever. It's the head type area split. And so you're getting a feminine and masculine energy, but out of like an Aphrodite character. And this is where you get April and all that stuff, right? So this is why you have a very weird hermaphroditic character in Aries and Taurus.
I'll say.
Yeah, you're getting this feminine and masculine characteristics out of it, and then they're the ones that produce time because of that schism, right? Because of that break, and because of that division, and then it starts cutting things up, and then you get this character that puts things into chronological order, and so that it's easier to scale time and to record it, and break it down because it has segments. And so that's what I feel like, the people that wrote the drummer boy and all that stuff, because a drum beat breaks up the music, right, into beats. It breaks it all up. So this is why Jesus was, as a baby, nodding at the drummer boy in like favor of him, like, yeah, yeah, see, you're breaking it up. You're doing it. You're doing what we need. We need it broken up. That way we can break down those pieces and really figure it out. That's how we even have existence itself, right? So this is just showing that they embed it into the symbology. And you can see it in everything. Like all these symbols are broken pieces, right? They're all dualistic in a way. You can split it here. This is a circle with a U, right? Half of it broken from the circle. This is a Gemini, which is broken in half, 69, right? They're all opposing kind of things because that is what this existence is, right? It's broken up into all these opposing things that need to be that, so that this
These are
can,
crossroads.
yeah, it's a combustible engine too, right? So you go fire, earth, air, water, right? These are all things that a combustible engine has to go through to
True.
create cycles that make the locomotive go down the road, right? Make it locomotive, right? So, let's see.
That's interesting. I mean, it seems so obvious too, because you look at it and you're like, well, clearly this is a symbol that's combining multiple concepts, maybe two concepts at least. It looks like almost every single one of the zodiac symbols looks like a combination of two concepts at least, right? Just about. So
Yep.
it seems so clear. Even as a kid, you should be like, okay, well, this is two concepts. I don't know exactly what they combine to mean, but there it is, and it makes the most sense. I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah, to cause movement that you have to do this. Like, I mean, you can get it into depth on each one. Like, okay, they were
Mm-hmm.
showing that this is the end and the beginning in a way because it's facing each other. It almost looks like two arrows hitting each other, right? We can go on long tangents on each one. Like people do whole shows on each one of these signs when these signs come in, right? As an astrologer or people that are into symbology, into tarot symbology, astrological symbology, they go into all this stuff. So I don't want to do that. I mean, we can go in further if there's people that have questions that are like,
Yeah,
well,
we'll go that late. We do it later. Let's just keep going for now.
yeah, it's better just to do kind of, a washover, just, an overview
But
of why.
basically, what you showed Aries and Taurus making Capricorn is kind of what I saw there, and I
And
like it.
Aquarius.
And
Yes.
Aquarius,
So
yeah.
yeah, they make Saturn. So that's 9 months later, right? So they're the mothers in a way of speaking in the zodiac terms. That's the two mothers of, or mother and father, depending on how you want, because it's just a feminine, masculine attributes that you can assign to them because it's not really a living being. It's just a concept, right? It's just symbolic. But that's the conception date of how you become Capricorn and Aquarius is that you're conceived in Aries or Taurus, right? So if you're conceived in Aries, you're a Capricorn, and this is why Mary is the mother of Jesus because she's basically representing an Aries, and a lot of times she's shown with red hair, like all the things that you would associate with Mars, right?
Hmm.
Is this Mary character, and that's why it's the mother of uh, Jesus, which is born in Capricorn, right? This is the reason why those things are. I know people try to argue all kinds of like Jesus was really born this time and this time. No, the reason they do it like that is because they're just showing the symbology of these characters. That this energy was needed, and 9 months later you would get this energy, right? And then the same thing with Taurus is that you're going to get an Aquarius energy, and it's in a different form, and it'd be considered more masculine, but also it has an air element, even though people think aqua and it's water. The reason that is associated, there's many pieces to the puzzle of why it is that things are shown the way that they are, and it's because the winter months are always going to be water associated altogether,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? And so that's, like I said, there's a lot of things you can just keep diving down, and we can get into all the details of why it was associated like it
We'll
is.
have
But
to do an entire episode on Charles Taze Russell first, I feel.
yeah,
but then we should. Like again, I think but I do think an outline right now, just to give people a vibe. This is an important idea that the weather that you're experiencing in your environment is so much more important than the position of the stars were 10,000 years ago. But we can use that witch's farmer's almanac information to figure out a lot about what's going on in our weather and why it's connected to these things. And they definitely are using them to encode the history of pretty important figures, right? Like that
yep.
seems pretty obvious.
And they were only there's a difference which people need to understand. There's a difference between your zodiac and the constellation that has the same name, right? So they named constellations after the zodiacs, but the zodiac is always going to be the same. and it's always going to change over time, right? And that's always going to be connected into your seasons. So just because the constellation is still there and that moved away doesn't mean anything has changed and that you have to follow that constellation. That was just a backdrop. It was a third layer that was needed to see every time, to just start calculating things, start writing them down, like, okay, over and over again. When that backdrop is there, because it will be there for a very long time, that gave humanity, at least for the history that we've known in the past so many thousand years, that we still have documentation, that they could use that for a long period of time. And then it started slipping away, and they knew it was slipping away, but it was fine. They were just calculating things, you know? And just like anything else, right? The church and all that has destroyed us looking into those things. And so at a certain point, we lost that understanding that that was going to slip away and it had nothing to do with it, but it's still there. The information has always been kept pretty pure, but they've what they've done is they distract us away from seeing it correctly, and then they give us other information or tell us not to look at all. But it's still there. There's been lots of cultures that have kept that stuff, like the
Yeah. And
the
we should go back into Mary. So I just want to say you're saying Mary is the Aries and Joseph is the Taurus. Is that the point of that there? Is that correct?
essentially, I don't know if I would argue that Joseph is the Taurus, but that might be a good way of putting it. But definitely Mary is Mars, and then
Right.
she
Yeah.
produces the Y, and we
Right.
can go into that dynamic. We can see that Y thing, that that split is
Yeah.
a big part of the symbology of these secret societies
I
and what.
think it's a big thing actually. Mary being shown stepping on the serpent, and Mary doing a lot of what it is the Roman Catholic tradition is the Virago Mary, like you say,
Yeah,
stronger Mary that is defeating the serpent that caused the strife of Eve. Right. This is a reincarnation of Sophia in a lot of a stronger altruistic. Yeah.
Isis, Athena, all of them are representation. Califia, right?
But
California.
taking El Elyon's law, like because it's the as you like Virago, it seems like it's the masculine virtues, right? Which are essentially not the feminine virtues. What's the best way to describe them, right? So what are the feminine virtues? It's like wisdom and chaos, right? We have
Uh,
Sophia and Eris, right?
fertility, being able to give birth and all that stuff. No matter what, she was able to
Creation,
give birth, but she had the
gestation,
masculine. Yeah, she had all the
nurturing.
elements in her, essentially, if you want to call it a her. And this is why I would actually prefer to call the thing that we call God more of a feminine aspect, because as long as it's
We
creative,
interact with that a lot more.
yeah, it's giving birth to stuff. And I know this is very controversial nowadays, and everything's been perverted so much, and there's all this, you know, trannies and hermaphrodite stuff and all that. And I'm not this is not pushing towards that at all. This is just the facts of nature, that the
But
thing
would
that,
you let God read to your kids? You know, just kidding. Sorry.
yeah, I would, definitely teach your children that the aspects of this world are very feminine and masculine, and that if you want balance, you want balance between the feminine and masculine, so that you want your child to respect both parents and understand that it's a dual dynamic that really makes it work well. Like any partnership, you have to have fairness and balance, and the truest strike of balance is between the feminine and the masculine. But the child themselves do not need to be confused and thinking that they are a different gender than what they are, because it has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with feminine and masculine characteristics. You know what I mean?
Energy. Yeah.
Like, you want to be loving towards your kids like your wife is, and like the mother would be in a way, but also you have to put some masculine for, and both the woman and the man can do those things. And so there is a balance in between us all, you know, that we are supposed to be having
Yeah.
some balance in the way
There
that we
does seem to be a difference, though, between the plebeian serf religion. There just seems like a masculine tradition of the plebeian religions. Like then you've got the mystery schools, which seem to be more feminine oriented, and the mystery schools seem to focus on order and chaos, whereas the more patriarchal systems focus on like right and wrong, good and evil. Like you should do this, you should not do that, like that kind of a thing. And so
exactly.
those one is chiseling away at, and I think this is also, you see this in the approach to gender, chiseling away at the building blocks of what we think a person should be, versus that maybe the feminine concept of nurturing something to grow into what it is different than chiseling it.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Because that's what it's really about. Is God gave us a pathway. God gave us what it is that we are supposed to be, and we need to honor that, right? So even
and
in
Sonya's right. Women can be violent and predatorial. That's what that prequel to Predator was, the movie Prey. It's like, look, you aliens, you have no idea what it's like to deal with a woman who survived 10,000 generations of human trauma. They're pretty
yeah,
hardcore. They're pretty hardcore.
yep, and it's going to be seen from that point of view, right? But this androgynous being, whatever it may be, that is at the beginning of existence, I would say is more balanced in its point of view, but it had to create a schism and break itself so that it could uh, travel the terrain faster and pick up, information faster.
Dude,
And then
CJ,
assimilate.
what if like 30-40% of the heroes you have are secretly transgender? Like, what if like most of these muscle guys, people that were like in the 80s, like big famous stars, right? Like, I'm not saying they are. I'm just like, but what if you found out that most of what you believe is a lie, right? About that, and that they're
And I
just taking
would say
steroids.
exactly. And I'd say most of these men that people think are men out there are not fucking very strong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at very least, it's very true, no matter what, right? But
Yeah. I've dealt with many different types of men in my life. My father, it was a very, he
this
was
is the
into
real question.
racing, construction, all that stuff. I don't consider him half the man that I am because I didn't
Yeah,
allow myself to be controlled by what other men thought. And
right.
I don't think that, breathing in fucking harsh chemicals and eating meat all day and everything is what makes you a man. You know what I mean? That you're a pirate and everything. It's, if I can fucking kill you faster than you can kill me, you know what I mean? And I can grab you by the neck and throw you up against a wall, or there's all kinds of ways you can judge what a man is. Like, am I technically better of a fighter because I train myself well? I keep myself healthy, I protect my family. There's tons of dynamics of how you can judge a man. And so there's a lot of this stuff where it's like kind of fake men that think they're in a gang, or they think that they're bikers or this or that. I've dealt with those bikers, I've dealt with those gang members, and I've fucking put them down in my life. You know what I mean? And they're not real men. They just pretend to be, and they live off of the esteem or whatever they got from other men around us, supposedly men around them, and they're not real men. They're
This
not
dude was
dynamic.
talking. This guy was talking about alpha males, so I had to post this portrait of Lady Helen Vincent, and it says, "Darling, alpha male theory was based on captive wolves. It describes the behavior of scared, isolated dogs."
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is a lot of these gang members and stuff like that, they'll go and shoot you. They'll do all kinds of shit. They're pansies if you corner them somewhere. You know what I mean? You confront them, you come up face to face to them, and you put them their back against the wall. They'll
The same
cower.
kind of guy that you take them, you put nails to their hands, you crucify them for 3 days, and you know what they do? They die. They die. That's what happens.
Or
Yeah.
they won't stand up and do like Jesus was a true male, right? Like he sat there and took the torture and everything, and went through it all, and still died slowly on the cross. You know, I have an ancestor that got burnt at the stake by Queen Mary, the first one to
Wow.
burn. And he sat there and put his hand in the fire and he said, "Go ahead, burn my hand first because I
Yeah,
wrote."
basic. Right.
I mean, so it just depends on what you find as a strength of masculinity, but
I was about to say
that's, you know,
the feminine urge to endure pain also though, right? Like cuz
that's very
pregnancy and
feminine.
everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very
So,
feminine to stand up for your
yeah.
children and make sure
Yeah.
that you're doing the right thing. It's not hyper masculine. And that's what I don't like is that some people think that this hyper masculinity makes them a real man. But come face
Yeah.
me, bro. I don't care who you are. Your hyper masculinity get broke down real quick. And there's a lot of men out there that'll break down your hyper masculinity till it's nothing. And you guys are a facade if you really think that that's what it's about. You have to try to strike balance, or you're not going to even find a female in this world if you don't have enough feminine attributes to your personality. Females don't even want to be around you, or they're going to be sick females that are very masculine themselves and they probably can't even produce children. You know what I mean? So you can get into it extremes on all fronts. And that's why I don't even like getting into that with people where they start, you know, thinking they know what it is to be masculine, because what you find out is most of them don't know what it really means to be masculine.
Oh my god, you sound like a leftist talking about social engenderment, but you're
And I'm
right.
yeah, but
You know?
I'm the farthest thing from that.
Right. You're the farthest thing. That's kind of the joke. But at the same time, there is a point to it that social engenderment is not the same as your sex, your gender, who you are, these things like
Yeah,
that. And so we really should be careful to redefine like what does it mean to be lobster versus like what does it mean to shop at the women's section of Target? Like that's a freaking different thing, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or the men, like the men's section, God forbid, like we understand what that means anymore. The men's section of Target, what does it mean? I can't even tell you, but I have some people on the inside there. All right. Let's go back to the presentation.
Yeah, so I mean, it's all part of that, right? In the presentation, they're showing this duality thing. They're showing the masculine, they're showing the feminine. This is something that astrologers and tarot readers and symbologists and all kinds of stuff have to dive in all the time, where they have to explain to people like, listen, this has nothing to do with your gender. This is the feminine energy and the masculine energy, just to be precise, right? If you are unbalanced if you think that in your psyche, you think that this is what it takes to be masculine, that you got to go out and fucking cut yourself every day and fucking headbutt people and drink whiskey till your teeth fall out, you're missing the point and you're going to lose in life, because there's a whole nother aspect that you have to deal with that brings balance, that even makes you a person that can become fertile. And fertility is the main thing, the main driver, and a huge part of the mission of this life. You have to continue fertility one way or another. You have to help life. That is huge. If not, then you're an enemy of this life, and you're not going to be put up with one way or another. You're going to get what you put out. And so if you want to become a victim of your own ignorance, then go ahead and be just polar in the way that you look at things, and just become extreme. Everybody that's an extremist doesn't have a good outcome, right? And it even shows here that these things point downwards and it's into earth, and it's a water and earth thing. And obviously, uh, Agni or fire and the sun are going to create fertility together. And so you're going to have to uh, understand that these features, that these elements are very necessary to put into you as a whole. If you get tricked into not being wholesome and have all the aspects, all the elements fairly balanced in you, you're going to become a problem one way or another. You're going to become a murderer. You're going to become suicidal. You're going to You're going to do something that's not going to make you a fertile character, and then you become useless to the system. And if you want to be in this system, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't want to be, and I just have to say, like, if you don't want to be a part of the system, you don't want to be in this place that has life and it gives you experiences in this world, then then you're you're not gonna have.
Then call the hotline for help because you're gonna need support to get through this.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult because I don't know if there's a way out. It looks like you're stuck in a cycle, So if you can't figure it out, how to make it the best.
Tell them about samsara, would you? Tell them about what samsara is. What's the naraka? What's the naraka, Billy? Come on.
Well, it's misery because you're not figuring out that there's balance that needs to be struck in this
So
world.
I would say samsara is sort of like the idea of endless cycle of repeated birth. And on one hand, this can sound kind of nice because it reminds us right back to this idea of renewed goodness. On the other hand, there's this idea of naraka, right? And so the naraka is sort of, I think a lot of what we think of as hell comes from the naraka perspective, because a lot of those Eastern traditions were brought to the West and they were like, oh, this is kind of like our ghost stories or our scary tales. And so there's a confluence of paganism and everything else and whatever's going on in the middle of Europe. But also you have Indo-Aryans and you have people in Scandinavia that are with boats talking to people in India and all over the world, right? So this confluence of information, that there's this idea of kind of a purgatory, and that's cool because hell, the way a lot of people describe it, is this eternal thing that just sucks forever, right? It's a bummer, right? But hell, if it's just sort of a thing that you did to yourself, that you go through and process yourself, is actually slightly better, right? If it's not an eternal thing, but like it's a process that you can get out of, then all of a sudden, that's a huge improvement on the idea of hell. So that's like a big part of the naraka, and why the naraka is basically a test in a lot of ways. It's both a punishment, it's also a test. And from there, you should be able to escape that cycle. Because every day is samsara. Every day is samsara, and you're in naraka. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so hell is Hades, or it means lower earth, right? And like I've spoken about before, is that I believe we're on a plane that's right above hell, and the closer you get to the lower valleys and into the ocean and stuff like that, you're getting closer and closer to what it is that has now been called hell, right?
Right. But
What
also, hell is like a Christian inversion. We talked about inversions before, and this idea of Hellenism is also important too. Like the idea that hell used to be that you were getting closer to God, and that at a certain point they said, oh, no, you don't want to get closer to that God. That's the wrong God. You want to get further away from that God. You want to get closer to our thing. Your thing is evil, right? So Hellenism and Hades and the Tartarus and everything like that became exclusively evil, bad, wrong, right? And that's actually not as nuanced as reality is.
And I would
Right.
say that the reason that that's happening, in my theory, is that as you get closer to hell, as we get lower and lower in spirit and all these different things, we're actually connecting into the underworld, which has lost souls. And you're getting a signal from those lost souls that are, just like anybody that has an addiction or any of these things, they're going to bring you down. When you try
Where are
to
those
jump in the
chakras
water and
at?
stay, they're going to bring you down. These energies that are lost and in the underworld want to bring us down into that misery because they don't know anything else. We're not supposed to be allowing ourselves to be brought down in the misery. We're supposed to be bringing them out of their misery. And so there's a lot of confusion when it comes to getting close into these depressions, right? All these things are explaining going lower. A depression is a lower thing. It's going down into a valley. It's all downward movement, right?
Yeah. There's hot
So,
hells, and then you get to the cold hells, which is like, bruh, if you thought the hot hells were bad.
yes, exactly. And so, I mean, it all is related to this imagery. If you guys can still see this imagery, right? It's
Here, let me
still,
pull. I'll pull back to yours. Sorry, here.
yeah, no worries. You know, if you look at this, they're saying the anima, right? This is what animates you, is the sun energy, and your spiritus, right? Your spirit or your emotions and your feelings and everything is like moon energy. And these two come down and to make your corpus, which is your physical body gets motivated and moves around and makes decisions based on your anima and your spirita, right? So you're an emotional but also driven character. There's something that's animating you. There's a purpose or a mission or a blueprint behind what it is that you are. And then there is an emotional element that allows you to react to the changing of the waves or whatever is happening around you, because every one of us is going to have different dynamics and different waves that we have to adjust to, and to get our boat, make sure it's sailing straight, right? So we have a pathway, but we also have certain spirits that are driving us, certain spiritual factors, emotional factors, things that are fluctuating that are going to cause us to have a certain stir to our situation. And so we have to take our blueprint of what we know, right? And this is what, like, Jesus and philosophers and you know anybody very wise in the past has told us that, look, there is a mission. There is, righteousness, right from wrong, you know basically a north, how to get from one place to another. But you're going to have spirits, your own spirit and other spirits, uh misguiding you and guiding you correctly. You have to learn to navigate by using discernment to get through this world. So it's not just, hey, this is the mission, I just got to do it. You're going to have things that are going to constantly be tugging at you. You're going to have that good angel and that evil demon on each shoulder, um, telling you different things. And so there's a lot of navigation that has to happen in the physical. And so uh, these symbols are considered the Azoth, and it was in here. It's related to the caduceus, initially coined to denote the esoteric formula pursued by alchemists, akin to philosopher's stone. The term Azoth later evolved to be a poetic expression for the philosopher's stone. So there, you know, sometimes I don't want to like get into certain aspects because it doesn't, it's not really something we should just dive into. And I think this has been the problem throughout history is you don't want to go too deep too fast because there's going to be too many questions on the road. So we should probably just skip through a lot of this stuff, and then we'll come back to it. Is that good?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, talking about Azoth, I mean, we can. I don't know. People are going to be like, "What? Why can't we know a bit about this idea of Azoth?" So maybe we should just say like, it's like a super
In general.
important aspect of alchemy. We can talk about that more.
Yeah. I mean, in general, like, look, it's showing you these planets, right? It's showing you
Yeah,
that you're going to need all the planets, and they're in certain sectors. And
Azoth is like a degree. Is like it's something that you're kind of looking for. You could kind of like the Philosopher's Stone. It's a really important
yeah,
thing
what is
used. Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of simple to know what the philosopher's stone is if you get this, right? That's why
okay,
we can just sit on here for a long time, and this is probably best to do, is just have a conversation and just sit on here for a long time. Because what does this mean, right?
right,
To rectify, right? And what does
right.
this mean? It means earth, right? So if we went into each one of these, which we could, and it will take a very long time, you you'll see that it's actually telling you a whole sentence of
So
stuff.
today, so like for instance, in the 19th and 20th century, a lot of computer scientists would have associated Azoth with solder because of the capacity for it to be used as the messenger between for electricity, for spirit, right? And so it's something that's been, I think that's probably the clue I would give until then, is that it's the messenger, right?
Yeah, because the caduceus itself is, and that's what we'll get into as I go further down. So
For sure.
you
Yeah.
see that there's a connecting uh message throughout all this stuff. Is I'm showing you that not only are these things, you just have to know them all and you'll understand they're all saying the same thing, but it's also telling you the gateway. It's telling you
Yeah.
when.
The gateway.
Yeah. So the caduceus itself, right? Like you were saying, it's the messenger. How does the messenger travel and become embodied and m- come to bring the message to humanity? Because this messenger, right? It's Mercury and Hermes and Thoth and all this stuff. Or you can even say Jesus himself. He proves himself to be the messenger by he came down, says he's coming from God, and he comes with a message to humanity. He says, "Look, this is the message. I'm departing in this way because I'm coming to bring this kind of message to you guys, so you guys understand." Right? And so these characters usually have uh, some sort of um, thing in their hand or whatever, which is the way that they're able to ascend and descend through all the layers, or Jacob's ladder. And this Azoth, which is also the caduceus, is the way to do it. And that is, you have to have balance, and it's a very hermaphroditic sort of thing. Even though he's Hermes, this is another thing people confuse, is Hermes and Aphrodite. They're not. It's when you're a hermaphrodite, you're of both. You're of Hermes and Aphrodite because she is the feminine aspect of Hermes. They're uh mother son, father daughter, sister brother. They have all these different things depending on the mythology and stuff like that, the symbology. But they're just, or their husband and wife. They're, the reason that is not because they're saying, oh, incest is good. They're saying that, look, this thing,
LOL.
yeah, they're saying that this thing is very dynamic, and it's feminine and masculine, and in different ways it plays these different roles with itself. It can be,
Yeah, and also I think it's kind of like a celestially racist term. It's like, you know what? You're all basically like, you're my kids. Watching you all together down there, you're basically brothers and sisters. Stop being so like evil to each other. I feel like that's also a part of it.
yeah, technically, like a lot of people believe in, like when you rebirth and stuff like that, is
Yeah,
that
reincarnation.
you can be rebirth as the father of your mother or the son of your daughter or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna
Your
change.
father-in-law could be your daughter. You know what I
Yes,
mean? That should be a
exactly.
comedy. I would watch that movie, right?
Uncle Grandpa. Like you can be a different character in the story, but you're gonna play out a bunch of different stories.
What's that song? My uncle used to love me, but she died. I think that's the one.
Yeah. So we're dealing with our God is very humorous, right? And
Clearly.
there's obviously a lot of dynamics to it, and it gets confusing, and people don't understand because they get kind of locked in certain imagery or certain feelings about things. And when it comes to understanding the chaos or understanding the spirit, you kind of have to let go of that, and you got to laugh a little bit and understand God's humor. And it's not even humor, it's actually dead serious too, and that's why you'll see things like skulls and death and all that stuff. But it's kind of funny. Let's say if we never die, really, right? We're just dying in our own lifetime, and then we're coming back again. There's really no death. There's nothing to really worry about and everything. It's kind of funny that we're set into this world, and we're so worried about dying, and we're so worried about keeping all these things that we have, and this is ours, and this is our precious, and all this stuff. and it doesn't really matter. That's not what really matters. So it is kind of funny, like the world is a
True.
joke in a way, right? We're playing in a play or a movie together, and we're taking things way too seriously sometimes. But the funny thing is also is you have to take some things very seriously, and you can't let them take your children and teach them that they're a different gender. You can't let them just come and step on your toes and take your home or this or that. You can't let them pass certain lines. You have to take those things deadly serious. You know what I mean? You have to protect life
Right.
with
This is
your
something that really bothers people. It's even beyond, like, so that's where it gets to that level, but it's even because people don't let it get to that level. You have, at the very simplest point, the more you define what you believe, the more you exist, right? Like the contrast of what you like, the more you actually have ideals and values and things to contrast with other things, the more relevant your existence is. So it
yeah.
becomes kind of a double-edged sword, because you don't want to be like, well, I'm not this and I'm not that and everything else. Like, you want to spend more time focusing on what it is you really are, right?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, you wanted to get into the details, and this is where I really respect you, Xirtus, is you obviously are interested in the details, and you want to give everybody an opportunity to explain their details, because through that we are that mixing pot, we are that medicine bowl, and we will come up with the solutions together, and it's going to take us all really diving into this stuff and really just being honest about it and not holding on to things because this thing has sentimental value to me because my aunt or uncle or my mother gave it to me or whatever. Like, that's not the big picture. And if we
Right.
focus on things that are distractions, and we don't really try to dive into the truths of this world and hear each other out and have a place of conversation, that's where we lose. And we're getting to a point, obviously, where a lot of humanity's realizing we need to sit down and to the table and start talking and really figuring what this thing is out, you know and if we don't, if we want to just bury our heads in the sand, or we want to say, hey, that's demonic, or that's this or that, and we're just scared, we're not being real men, we're not being real humans, and we're not realizing that we have a fate no matter what, and that is death. And before you go to the grave, do you want to figure out what this thing is, or do you just want to hide from it and party until you die? you know and
The people that do that die younger.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And that's it's fine. We
It's your
all play
call.
a
It's your
piece.
call. Yeah.
Yeah, we all play a piece in this world, and we all learn from each other. And those people that throw away their life quickly and burn their candle out really fast, they can get real bright and interesting and all that stuff, but after so many generations, are they just going to be forgotten? And what was that all for? And the only thing that it really is for the people that are during that generation, during that period of time, that actually will take in that information and take in that stuff, will do something about it, and
I
then
was
have.
thinking about that because there's a priest I always liked a lot who was maybe, I think he died when I was maybe 10, but he was a prolific writer, a metaphysicist, and a complete genius. And through him, I'd met a number of other intellectual priests who were completely brilliant people, right? Like, metaphysicists who understood, they would love these kinds of conversations. And they die, like they live amazing lives, and then they die at 90 years old. And there's a little block somewhere in San Jose. That's it. Like, everything else is gone. There's no infamy for a priest unless he put out some sort of book that got on a TV show, which would have not been any of their goals, right? Like, these are more likely people to take vows of silence for a year or something for the novelty than they are to go on a book tour. So there's this sort of depression you hit when you're young. You're like, oh my God, how long will Rome be remembered? These people who are forgotten, who are so important, so cool at very least, right? Like the kinds of people you would want to know, and they're gone. And where do you find replacements for that? And then I met this lady because he was a teacher at Santa Clara University. I met a lady at Foothill College who's working in the library. And I don't know how, but somehow we started talking about how she was at Santa Clara and that she studied philosophy and metaphysics. And I asked her, did you have that professor, Father Fallon? And she just looked like, how do you know who that is? Right. Because he only taught at that school for like 10 years from 62 to 72. So she was like, it's impossible. You know what I mean? And then she had a twin sister and they're both in their 60s. And we just I mean, I got introduced to all of these amazing people because there are thousands of people that went through those classes, 100 a semester or something like that for 10 years. So all of these people that have been completely changed, their lives completely changed by this person. And yeah, we don't know, they know his name, but nobody else knows his name. But everyone around them, it's quantum leap, right? Because they're all influencing all these people just because they took a class one time. So I don't know.
Exactly. So that's the influence that we have, is we are making a domino effect through this world, but it's also localized, right? And you'll get certain characteristics out of certain people because they were influenced by their area, right? And that's becoming more washed out as we become a global world, internet, all that stuff. But there's very specific characteristics that you will see, you'll recognize. You're like, yep, you're from California, you're from the Bay Area kind of people, right? Like us.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
So like I was in Minnesota and I was watching all the commercials and they're very Minnesota, you know? And then I got home and the IP tracker puts on my local commercials and they're like, bruh, they're gonna put on a tax on kombucha. Vote no on Prop Z, bruh. And it's just like, what is happening? Like how linear? I don't know. That's kind of scarier because
influence, right?
they're putting us in a little bucket, bro, for sure.
Yeah. I can hear the Canadian in there for sure, right?
Dude, we have I think it's the coldness because we have that. It gets so cold here when you're like surfing, you know. So you're like, but same with the Canada. I don't know, both.
Yeah, both. I get little dude stuff. Yeah, I mean, you can track all that stuff if you look at the influences that they had on each other, depending on Hollywood, right? There's a lot of Canadian comedians that entered into our overall media or Hollywood, right, through the 80s, 70s, SNL, all that. So we got a lot of Canadian influence. And so I think the Canadians, a lot of C's influenced the world, Californians and Canadians, right? So we all have a bit of Canadian in us, whether we like it or not.
God, I like it. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I think you know that about me.
Some of my favorite
Tabernacle
are Canadian, right?
Yeah.
Lots of greats. Jim Carrey, John Candy, I mean, almost endless ones in SNL, right? You can name off.
Sir William Stephenson.
Yeah. So I guess getting back to are we still on the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess if we want to get in deeper, like, because this is the Azoth, this is a version of it, we can get into these words. It's easy to look them up, so then we're not like just carrying on. We can go into each one of them and we can kind of just talk about what do we think that means, right? If you're interested. If not, then we can just move on. I mean, I can just point out some other things in here. What do you think?
I'm looking at it. I'm thinking about some of the symbols: masculinity, femininity, the sun and the moon pouring into the chalice, the production of life. Let's see. Do I see Saturn and is that Jupiter? Saturn and Jupiter. So the masculine is Saturn and the feminine is Jupiter.
This is the sun side. This is the moon side, right?
But is that Jupiter there below the feminine?
Yes, that's Jupiter. Okay. Yep. So see how Saturn and Jupiter are right across from each other, and then Venus and Mercury, right? And then the sun and the moon, right? Or Venus and Mars, sorry, and then the sun and the moon.
And then the double-headed phoenix. So this idea of like the reincarnated phoenix, and then the griffin, and then all of this is the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, right? So the earth and the celestial sphere next to the
ecliptic and the Milky Way plane crossing each other.
I was earlier thinking about making the visual for this video a septagram, so I find it really interesting that it focuses on the 7-pointed star. That's my favorite.
Yeah, yeah, and that 7-pointed star is associated with the pole star, but also it's associated with the 7 underworlds and the 7-headed snake that Vishnu rides on, and Atlas and his 7 daughters. And there's a very important reason why all those are connected, because they also connect into this gate thing, right? So anyway, we'll go into that later. But if you want to look up, I mean, I think everybody knows what these kind of mean. You can figure it out, but let's just look them up, and then we can talk about each one of them.
Yeah, I was just going to ask also, so what's it say up there? It says Visita Interior Terrae
Interior. Yeah.
Rectificando.
Yeah.
Invencies occultum. Okay, so visit the interior of the earth or of the world.
Yeah.
By rectifying, you're finding the hidden stone. Hidden stone. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? You can visit this place by rectifying that stone, right? The philosopher's stone, by figuring this out. And what is the interior of Terra is a place where a lot of people, a lot of old Mithraic cultures and stuff do their little seances and stuff, and take drugs and all that. And that's where this character is birthed out of Terra, or Mary, So they're saying that this is the chalice. This is why the chalice is here.
Okay.
This is the Holy Grail. Is this the Philosopher's Stone and the Holy Grail are the same thing? That they'll basically reveal what it is, that this grand secret is, by following this path, by understanding these things, these symbols, and how to balance them and all that stuff.
Interesting.
That's why I don't
and what you drink out of it. All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, and what is it? It's moonlight and sunlight, so it's obviously something that we're all drinking, But how is it that we drink it, and how do we get there, and how do we rectify to, how do we really visiting it, and all that stuff is what we'll get into later, because there's a lot of things that need to be sussed out before we even go there. But we can come back and you'll see, like, they're pointing at it, right? And they're highlighting it, and they're putting imagery that is showing it. But until you understand why it is that they make these characters point certain ways and do certain things and are split certain ways, and what do they mean, you're not going to get it. It's kind of convoluted on purpose, but it's also convoluted because life is convoluted, right? There's a lot of angles, there's a lot of mysteries, there's a lot of things to figure out, because that's where Sophia comes in, is that we have to be sophisticated to understand, and that sophistication doesn't happen right away. It happens over time. You have to have time. You have to have chronology. You have to have this time character, and this time character is in control of when it is time or not, and is judging us constantly to figure out if it's time. And so we're not going to have heaven on earth, and we're not going to have a place that God hasn't forsaken us, until we make it a place that God hasn't forsaken us. And that is understanding this place. Why is it that these guys understood this place to a point that they could put it all here in front of your face, and you don't understand it, right? Because you haven't put in the time that they did to understand it. But they knew.
We live in the craziest generation. I don't know, because I guess it's not that crazy. We lived in a generation. Okay, so you and I come from a initiated generation that had less masters, right? But there were masters, there were ascended masters, and so there was initiation. You go back 100 years, and there's Freemasonry, but there's far less ascended masters and initiated people that are happening around the world. I think, I don't know. There seems like there's a point where there's a precipice that emerges. And now maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like today we have less initiated people in this newest generation, people born after 1999 or something like that. Yeah. Are they're less of them in the initiated schools of ascended learning, in the mystery schools, than ever before. Yeah. Like Freemasons in the 20s, in the 1840s, after the Masonic hysteria, still more, right? Still more people interested in these things. And I think maybe it has to do with the drugs, like that people are so afraid of opening their mind because of the fact that it's associated with fentanyl and drugs. And these kids are like, wow, if I open my mind, that is part of Bigfoot and drugs. And I can't, and they don't, and also that yoga is taught as being this really weird, hokey exercise routine. So it's like so we're in a really weird time. So also, yeah. I say that mainly because I meet people all the time where I'm stunned because of how uninitiated they are, how unawake people are. There are some people where it's surprising. It doesn't mean they're bad people. There's a lot of really amazing, great potential people there. But I feel like there's something turned off and not turned on in a lot more people than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, because I believe that they're trying to figure out the test and they're not passing it. And that's the thing, is like a big portion of how even astrology works and all that is your natural anima or understanding of the blueprint is going to play a role, and then how much you're influenced by the emotional side is going to steer you a lot. You have to pass the tests of the Sphinx, right? So the Chariot is the card of Cancer, right? And so there's two Sphinxes, and all the stories about the understanding the riddles of the Sphinx to get the Chariot to move is very important. It's showing you also, right? It lines up with Aditi and the nakshatras of Cancer and all the stuff that I've been going into. You have to understand the riddle of this world, which is one huge part of the riddle is understanding that it's a riddle, right? That it's a test. If you don't think it's a test and you think that you just deserve certain things and you're going to get them and you're just going to ride the wave with the rest of the people that actually figure things out and try to look into things and work hard and do the necessary work to deserve to be in the place of the paradise or the heaven on earth or whatever it is, you're mistaken. You're not going to get there. And that's why devastation is happening on such a big level in this world, is because there's a lot of people that are just trying to ride the wave, and that wave isn't for you. And I'm sorry to say that that wave is going to drown a lot of people, and it's meant to drown a lot of people. It's going to, I mean, I'm sorry, but it's a reaping time.
So use the Xirtus promo code to buy inflatable rafts for your family, because it's coming, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just, I would say, just if I can tell anybody anything, and I know a lot of people don't like my personality, they don't like the things that I believe, they don't like my mustache, they don't like my voice.
That's what people are kept up at night about too.
They are, like, some people just, there's certain things that people nitpick over that they don't like people about, you know what I mean? And that's not very important, I don't think. You know what I mean? It's like the little shit. You should get past it and just recognize that you need to figure out your pathway. You need to figure out the truth, and you need to discern things with love and with an open heart, but also with a closed fist to things that are trying to dominate you and hurt you. You got to figure that out, and so if something isn't helping you and it's hindering you, you got to break it down. Like if it's drugs, whatever. These things are all here to make it so you don't pass the test. They're all testing grounds.
I just want to let Abbott know that I love tongue and brain tacos, and I will eat them all. I will eat all of your brain and tongue tacos. All right.
All right. Just to let you know, obviously, Xirtus knows I don't agree with that. No brain, no tongue. All right.
Yeah, you're a vegetarian. What are you gonna do about you? I'll eat it for you.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the thing is some of us are going to choose certain things that are unhealthy for us or are not going to get us to a better place and a more balanced place in this world. And that's fine. I allow everybody to make their choices. I'm not trying to force anybody or influence anybody.
I literally got to move away from California so I can't eat your brain and tongue tacos. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Well, you were a vegetarian at one time, so maybe
it might happen again.
Yeah,
it happens sooner than you realize.
Yeah, and that's another a thing that people don't like about me is they think that because I'm a vegetarian, they'll add on layers of what it is that I am because I'm a vegetarian or whatever. But I know for sure I've been a vegetarian long enough and I've been healthy, and I comparatively to everybody in my family and comparatively to my friends and people around me, I'm in better health than they are by choosing the way that I've chose my diet, that I know comparatively I've chosen the right way. So
a lot of people don't know this, but Giant's actually 73.
Yes. Actually 83, but thank you. I look 73. Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to the food that we ingest, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And we can get into this argument on some other podcasts.
So I want to say it though, because I remember I know I'm interrupting, and but we're gonna go a little bit longer. I hope that's okay.
Yeah,
I remember being anytime I get like a big job or I'm going somewhere, I become a vegetarian for a few months around that, just for the karmic impact, because I don't want to screw up my life. I'm like, all right, I'm already changing a lot of things. The easiest thing to do is to be a vegetarian. The problem with that is almost every time I do that, you get this really huge charge because, maybe in the process of alignment, you have an extreme energy boost. And if it's not controllable, then you get super majestic, right? So that tends to be a major reason.
Yeah, because you only produce so many enzymes. You need enzymes to break apart a lot of things, fats, protein, all that stuff. And you cannot assimilate meat proteins directly. Anything that you're getting from a carnivore diet, you can't do it. You have to break it down into amino acids and then rebuild into proteins.
Abbott's like, tone it down. Okay, what I'm also saying is that if you move to a place and you change your life a lot and you're involved with this karmic impact of destroying life and suffering, and you're consuming the hormones of animals that have suffered and all blah, 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 like the left says, at very least, your butterfly effect is incalculable what your impacts will be to your life. So the less random influences to your life choices and to your environment that you make, the more in control of your destiny you become. So it's actually beneficial in a lot of ways for most people, I would say, to be vegetarians, just for that reason alone, because you have more control over the scientific experiment that is your life and your choices. You're in more of a vacuum, right? And if you think about it, Alex Jones would tell you too, like, you're not likely to be friends with, maybe some of you are eating elk that you hunted, but 99% of you, it's cloned beef from the Illuminati. Let's just be real. Like, it's not great for you. All right. I made your pitch for you, but okay.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into it because I'll just end up telling people how, come and challenge me. I trained with all kinds of fighters, MMA fighters, and
oh yeah, no, dude, gorillas are huge. Gorillas are way bigger than the little monkeys that eat meat. These big grass eaters, dude, the grass eaters are huge, bro. It's true.
Exactly. And it's just about understanding tactics and all kinds of stuff. And, the Diaz brothers, they're all vegetarian, right? You see how brutal they are, and they heal fast, and they'll fucking take cuts, and they'll keep going. They're brutal characters. It doesn't make you any less of a, very
Beach is asking, was Jesus a vegetarian? I think Yeshua was a vegetarian. I'll be honest with you. And the fish story, I think, has to do with that. I think the idea, this is one of those stories I've heard at some point, a Vedic interpretation, that seaweed and the amount of life accumulant that was created, if you think about it, some chocolate milk and ice cream today, they throw seaweed into because it makes it healthier and more nutritious and also adds flavor and gelatinous quality. So there's a lot there. Of course, according to the modern interpretation, he's a fish eater and he's training a bunch of fishermen. But he's telling him even then he's going to make them fishers of men. So he's going to change their life completely from being people that are catching fish all the time.
Yeah,
so
it's all extremely symbolic. So we can get into that, just like I tell people.
There's a lot of evidence, though, that Christ went to the East and was pretty interested in karmic traditions. And so for a lot of people, you didn't eat a lot of meat a lot of the time, right? Maybe even with the Ethiopians who eat a raw goat, right? And I've done this too. You eat kitfa, and it's kutbe, is glub glub, is you eat this kitfa, where it's just completely raw and it's shredded. They do this once a year, right? So maybe once every 10 years, but it's a super rare occasion that these people that otherwise only are eating chickpeas and collard greens and kale and all these kinds of vegetables most of the time with some teff flour bread. That's their yearly, every day what they eat. And then once a year or once in a huge celebration, the family will share like a slaughtered goat or something like that, and it'll be eaten basically raw, right? It's shredded up and eaten raw.
Same thing with Americans. You can see it in any just movie depicting older times and stuff like that. It was a rare occasion that Americans got meat on the table. Other than that, they were eating all vegetables. So there's a lot of information, period, about that. How can the animal get the nutrition from the vegetables originally that the other animal eats that animal to get the nutrition? That is a diet that comes from originally the soil, and it's passed down 4 times, but there's enough nutrition in that for that animal to get. And that animal sometimes is us, right, when we're eating meat. But somehow the vegetarian can't get enough nutrition from the original source. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, also you're pretty ripped and you work pretty hard. How long have you been a vegetarian? I know this wasn't our point. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. But like, you've been a vegetarian for how long?
I've been a vegetarian for 20 years.
Yeah.
21 years.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, you're one of the most energetically stable and healthy people I know, and you're very strong, and you do like real work.
I work on roofs. I've been doing construction my whole life. My family, they're all meat eaters and everything like that.
I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. I know
I confront the issue quite often. I get all the jokes in the world and all that stuff. And like I said, I'm healthier than the rest of my family because of the diet.
And there's nobody else I'd want to rob a train in the early 19th century with. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Right? I gotta get somebody to carry all the heavy gold. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you.
And I'll train any of you guys how to fight. I'm sure there's some people out there that may know how to fight and stuff like that, but I've been training with, UFC fighters for years, and my buddies in jiu-jitsu and taekwondo and, everything you can think of, kung fu, all that stuff. So pint jack, salat.
Right. Sorry I brought up cow brains. That was my fault. Abbott, actually, it's your fault. Abbott, get out.
I don't mind. I know humans.
Get out of here, Abbott. No, you're cool. We love you.
They needed to eat meat at certain points for sure. I just think that it's run its course.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Right.
I convince people that it's unnecessary at this point, but go ahead and keep eating meat, and I'll see your comments, and we can go and have a little comment war and all that stuff.
I like Abbott. Abbott's talking about LSD, LDS, DNA. He's using a lot of acronyms. It's really good. All right. Sorry.
I don't want to. Who doesn't like me?
I don't want to stop you though. I've definitely taken up so much of your time on this sidetrack. Let's get a little bit more of the presentation in. You don't have to finish it, but like get at least another 10 minutes or more, or you can go as long as you want. Let's see how your energy is.
Yep, we'll just quickly, because you already went into it. This is just the breakdown of each one of those words, right? It just means the vista.
Oh, based. Nice.
Visit, right? The interior, entrails, bowels, guts, interior, inside of, terra, which is earth, rectificando, which means to rectify, to regulate, to control, to govern, direct by rule.
Oh, this is interesting though. Also, inventum to mean to come upon versus to invent. See, again, I love it. This feels like we have to have multiple interpretations of things, right? To discover just as much as to invent.
Yeah, how much, what did they mean by that exactly, right? So it means to come on, to discover, to find this secret stone or hidden gem, right? And what is that secret stone, right? You have to visit the interior of Earth to rectify and to come to the discovery of this secret stone or this hidden gem to
Come to the
understand.
discovery.
Yeah. But that's just an interpretation. You could probably mix it around and stuff like that. But
I mean, like I think that it would be obvious that the other interpretation is that you have to invent or create, to fabricate, to synthesize the philosopher's stone or the hidden gem. You have to make one, right? That's the other way to say invent is, right? Invenir.
yeah, and that's what they were trying to do, and I think they're still trying to do, is they're trying
that's wow.
trying to get it to manifest. They're trying to get it to show itself. They're tracking down information based on the symbology, and they're seeing it in the geography of this world, and they're heading towards it. Like if you follow John Dee, if you follow Sir Francis Bacon, if you follow these philosophers going back, these symbologists, these occultists, and all this stuff, the Rosicrucians, the Knights Templar, just name it. They keep heading a little bit north and west, but mainly west, right? And they keep passing the baton, right? This is the Olympic baton that they're passing, this fire that they're keeping the secret of what does this fire mean and what is it going to finally light at the end. They're trying to light something up at the end. They're going somewhere. There's a mission. There's a purpose, and then the stories turn into this lapis azulis, this secret stone, or this chalice, right? This holy grail, right? And the grail, if you want to look up grail, it means gradient or valley. That's why the grail is a chalice shape. It's a feminine, it's a womb kind of shape, right? So that also tells you the interiora of the terra. So it's down in the valleys. So when you look at geology and how nutrient cycles happen, speaking of nutrients and how you get nutrients in vegetarian or whatever, it's you grow all your food down in valleys. Where do humans
Right.
usually
You get some kind of a living plant to digest the minerals and the stones and the crystals into something that's digestible. It's an alchemical process where so you can consume basically rocks, right?
At the bottom of the chalice, exactly. And in the valleys and where the rivers run into places like oceans and bays and stuff like that. And this is where they focus on. And those are fertile valleys. And that's because the rock and everything has been washed down. And lots of life has died on those hills and on the land that gets washed over and gets pulled down into that. So not only are you eating those minerals and all that stuff, those macro and micronutrients, but you're also eating the experience of your ancestors and the ancestors of every living being that's ever been on this earth before you. And so you're getting that grail, you're getting that holy grail by eating that stuff, by consuming it. And it's not only, a physical thing, but you're going to get it over time. And this is one of the points that I would like to make, is that Silicon Valley is a very specific valley that they were seeking out, just like the Egyptian valley was there. That was a very specific riverway and stuff like that, where there was lots of nutrients and lots of life that existed there, that accumulates knowledge over time. We're building on knowledge even instinctually or heretically or whatever. We're getting information over time. And so there's a, a certain energy that's built up in areas that at least these occultist secret societies and stuff like that aim for, to build out their next piece of the story that they're trying to get to the end of. They're trying to rectify this scenario. And so they're going to things that come out of the bowels and the guts of the interior. So they're pulling up these minerals, or pulling up gold and silica and silver and other crystals and stuff, quartz and uh, many different jewels and everything, because they were embedding them, like originally the kings and all that stuff. They embedded in their crowns and all that, because they thought just touching it to themselves, they would start absorbing a lot of that information, which is embedded from the ancestry of this earth, because it's embedding its memory in itself, and that needs to be pulled back up and brought to the surface and calculated again, right? Re-examined. And information is stored in those things, and water washes over them and pulls that information, that memory off. So there should be some sort of recognition of crystal and metals, and also water, and understanding at least an element of what it is that they're trying to do with information, and where they're heading with this information, what they're trying to um, I guess uncover, right? They're trying to bring something to the surface. So a lot of people think that they're trying to they call this AI the first robot that they had AI generated and everything, Sophia, that they're trying to figure out how to rectify her, bring this feminine entity to the surface by making it a body, right? So that's something to take into consideration, and that's just a piece of the pie. All right, we already kind of went into this one. It just says the same thing, but a little bit closer of the imagery.
Triguna Macoites, Tricorum Satisti. Yeah, sorry. Beddogs and broomsticks.
Yeah. So I would just suggest that anybody just, take a look at these and find other ones and everything, and just look at the pictographs, look at this stuff, really concentrate on it. Like, what are they trying to say with that? The more you look into it and everything, you'll see that the artist, the people behind it were trying to show this imagery on purpose, obviously. And it just takes time. People want to know it right away, but it takes time to look at it. And there's a lot of stuff we'll get into later on what it is that I think they mean by it. So this one is showing, this is also a representation of the Azoth. And you'll see this a lot with this, lion character, lion-headed, snake-bodied, and it either has snakes wrapping up its body. There's a lot of depictions of this. This is again like a caduceus character, right? It's going to have a dragon eating a snake, or a snake eating its tail, a lion eating a dragon or a phoenix, and and it wraps in a figure eight or a circle. And obviously this is the sun and the moon. um, there's a lot of information behind why it is that each artist depicts it in that way, but we'll get into more details as we go down. um, So this is more about the Azoth, is believed to be an animating energy, spiritus animus of the body, and inspiration and enthusiasm that moves the mind. The Azoth is believed to be the mysterious evolutionary force responsible for the drive towards physical and spiritual perfection. So that's important, that it's responsible for the drive towards physical and spiritual perfection. a huge part of what people leave out is that this world is physically uh, perfecting itself, right? We want to, you know, try to just focus on the spiritual, like, oh, we're supposed to, you know, get back to God, or, you know, become spiritually perfect. But they forget that this place is not perfect, this physical place, and that there's a lot of work to do on the physical plane. And this comes first. You have to do the physical. I think that's even why they put it in here as physical and then spiritual perfection. You know, it's we're crossing, we're crossbreeding, we're doing all kinds of stuff. Like when you're making the perfect type of weed, right? As um, you know, Pineapple Express. Remember, he's talking about the two different types of weed, and if
Yeah, totally.
they made a baby, this would be Pineapple Express, right? We're making Pineapple Express physically in this world. Like we're mixing together. That's why the Americas is such a mixing pot. Like this is the place where we're supposed to mix together. And they knew that. These philosophers knew that. That's part of the stone. And the stone is a physical thing, right? So don't forget the physical. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and think that we're just supposed to get to some spiritual understanding. You're going to have to come to some physical recognitions of what it is that you're even here and existing in the physical world first before you ever get to anything that we kind of commonly speak about as some spiritual perfection that we're going to eventually get to. I think that's way further down the line, and we're not even close to the physical yet. So why would we ever be allowed to spiritually perfect? That can't come yet until you get the physical first, you know, because there's a lot of emotional and all kinds of social dynamics that really need to be worked out before someone can actually honestly be sitting down and doing some spiritual work. You have to be not worried about, you know, getting poisoned or killed or all kinds of stuff. You got to worry about other people not having those problems before you can sit down and actually think that God would even allow you into a higher spiritual realm or anything if you're just leaving your brothers and sisters behind to rot or die because of war or anything like that. So there's a huge physical component that people are just trying to surpass and move past, because that's a difficult thing to deal with, is the physical world. So yeah, just want to point that out, that that's a very important component to this philosopher's stone, is that the fact that it's called a stone. You have to become a stone. You have to become a very strong stone. And if we don't do that together, we're not very strong at all. We can just get crushed with the rest of them. You know, there's machines that'll crush diamonds even. So if we don't got the the strength together, we have really no strength at all, I feel. Um, so it's believed to be a universal solvent, a universal cure, an elixir of life. The uh, Buddha's, you know, the medicine Buddha's mixing bowl is, that's what he's mixing together, is this elixir of life. And this is what the Hindus, they were mixing this everlasting life, this elixir of life. You can't get there because life is very physical. You know, just it's innate in the word life that it's a physical thing. So you're not going to get any elixir by, you know, praying your way or meditating your way to some other world inside of your head. You're going to have to do it. It's a physical act that we have to do in this world to create that elixir of life. And it's going to take a lot of strife to get there. And we've been through a lot of it. So, you know, I'm not arguing that we need to sit here and beat each other up more or anything. I'm saying that we've done enough and we need to learn how to fix this place. And we're at a point where we can. Um, so the Azoth is said to embody all medicines. That these are true medicines, though, not just, pharmaceuticals and all. Those aren't medicines. You know, those are acting as, they're disguised as medicines. So all true medicines, I would say, have the embodiment of an Azoth, because if it really is a cure, if it really is a medicine for the situation, then that's an elixir that is helping life sustain itself, get back into homeostasis or further life and extend it, right? as well as the first principle of all other substances. So that is saying that the first principle is the mission, is the blueprint, is the purpose, is that all substances, their purpose is to evolve to the point that they are a medicine, that they are an elixir, that they are a cure, that they are something that extends life or adds to life, not subtracts. It all needs to go down its line of evolution until it gets there, right? Until it's used in one way or another to revert things back to what it is. It needs to be used in its right context so that it can be a medicine. And this is what the medicine Buddha talked about with all. And he says, you guys are all each other's medicine, right? Evil is good for good. And the fact that it reminds good that there's evil out there and that there's things to get over, right? There's obstacles in this world. There's things to keep moving and everything. Or else you would just stay there and there wouldn't be any purpose and you would just stagnate and die, right? You don't have movement without something challenging you. So you need challenges. In the late 16th century, Paracelsus, 1541, was said to have achieved the Azoth. And in the Rosicrucian portrait of 1567, the pommel of his sword bears the inscription Azoth. I'm not going to pretend to know what that means, but he was obviously focused on the Philosopher's Stone.
I really wanted to show you something because of that too. Hold on, just for 2 seconds. Okay, so because I made that joke about bedknobs and broomsticks, they have a whole part of the movie where, in order to destroy the Nazis, the British have to get this witch star from the Astaroth, right? Instead of Azoth, the Astaroth, right? Astor. Yep. But still, Zoroaster. There's something to this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the symbol too is the pentacle with these pillars that remind me kind of your double snake image that you were showing earlier, right? If you imagine the two faces, right? And then this is all from this kid's story, Bedknobs and Broomsticks. But I highly recommend we dig into that a bit more, because it seems like it's somehow, even though the name is slightly off, Astaroth, I feel like they're really talking about the Azoth now the more that you do this.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what you'll find is that I was trying to tell Noel is that I honestly believe if you look at the history, the ancient history of all of these spiritual systems and everything and these mythologies and these stories and they're built out, I think they were seeing into the future. And I think they saw future words that we were using and they were trying to put those into their language, and they may have been off, but now we've gotten back to the future. This is a Back to the Future episode, that we're coming to the real meaning of those words. And that's why there's a lot of words that sound very similar and have a connection in this weird way, but linguists or whatever will argue, oh, they don't have the same root or anything, like they didn't even mean them to be like that. And it's like, well, I don't that, to me that doesn't matter. It's either meant to be, maybe, or they were maybe even seeing into the future and seeing words and how we were using them, and they were trying to write them down and keep them going. You know what I mean? It's kind of a, getting back to that wormhole thing and time travel and stuff like that. And we're going to get into other stuff in other episodes where it connects to all the computers being connected through time. I know we've spoken about that. You were going into the details of that. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a connection with Azoth and a lot of different things. And yes, the sword bearer and King Arthur, and there's plenty of stories in history where there's a sword and a stone, right? And so it's all connected for sure. I don't know exactly what is meant by this specific one that he's talking about, but
I mean, the idea that Zoroaster created the alchemical Azoth that's pretty much already an accepted myth. So I can see them being even further connected for sure.
Yes, and the fire itself is what you would make the sword in. And so this story of these elves or whatever creating in these fires, creating these weapons for these gods and all this stuff. It's all interconnected. And I'm sure a lot of people out there listening and people that are going to listen in the future, can go into all different types of stories. They're thinking of it right now. They're just like, oh yeah, it connects this, this, and this. Yes, it does. All those things are very relevant in all this. So if I'm just kind of washing over and going through this, like, we can address that later. Put your comments in there. We'll talk about it. I hope to bring on anybody that has any information that wants to share and stuff, because it's going to take us all to really dig into all the facets of what this all means. Like, anything that I'm saying and how I'm expressing it is just the way that the research has, shown its light to me and stuff like that, shown the information to me. And there's things I forget about. There's things that I'll bring up later. There's things that I never even thought about. There's so much to this world. There's no way any individual's ever going to know, except for Xirtus, because he's a supercomputer.
Sometimes, not always.
Yeah, but there's no way. There's too much information. So, anyways, as we go through this,
Exactly.
we'll always come and go back over, and that's my hopes, is to really dig into all this stuff deeper and deeper. But I just want to kind of just show some major connections with it all, so it opens up some doors to conversations, right?
Based.
So let me just get through this real fast. Let's see. So the first part of the Pseudo Paracelsian Archaeodoxis Magica, first printed in 1591, bears. So this is very important too, this time period, 1541, 1591 to 1567. So we'll go into other things that are connected to this. This is Queen Elizabeth, Sir Francis Bacon, John Dee, and all that stuff during the same period of time. So these people were all connected. They were all interacting, talking, sharing information about all this stuff. So it bears the title of Liber Azoth, containing various magical sigils and recipes intended to protect against illness and injuries. Because the Azoth is believed to contain the complete information of the entire universe, it is also used as another term for the Philosopher's Stone. So the over the in general information of what the Azoth is also explains the entire universe, right? And so that's why it's not easy to explain, but once you start seeing the overall features of how this world works, how the hydrologic system cycles, how the nutrient system cycles, a lot of the stuff that we go over, like these elements, like how the planets play different roles and stuff like that, you're going to have a better grasp, whether the Christian church or whatever tells you guys to ignore. And I'm sure it's not a lot of you guys, but people out there ignore the different elements and the different factors of this world. You're going to bury your head in the sand and not understand that the deeper you understand this stuff, you're going to eventually get it, and then you can apply all these things. And I'm sure a lot of people already know this, but you just have to keep diving, you have to keep looking, and you have to keep comparing. Because once you get a view of the basic dynamics of what they're trying to explain this Azoth is, then you can start applying that and looking at other things, and you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's like a key. It's like a Rosetta Stone, and that's why they call it Rosetta Stone and all that stuff. It's that's why the Rosicrucians and the rose and the stone thing, it's they're going to use the same words across uh all these different cultures and mythologies and everything. So here again, you got the double serpents winding up the staff, and they're keeping it in this area, right? These are like dragons that are keeping it in a very specific area. And this is Sumerian, right? Or um, uh, yeah, Sumerian. This is from the Epic of Gilgamesh. He is seen in the underworld. And Dumuzi, Ishtar. We'll go into this later, but it's better to show the imagery. Sorry, my son. This is inky coming out of this hole in the ground. Um, and then there's water and fish associated with it. Um, trying to remember exactly what I wanted to show with this. Okay, this has to do with the Golden Gate. Um, so this is imagery of inky coming out of this Golden Gate and this scroll, or they rolled it out on clay, and so he's holding a purse thing. I think is somewhere how to open that gateway, and so it probably has all the items needed to open the gateway. We can get into more specifics about that on another one. So a lot of this information is going to go into it's going to go into the character that keeps on manifesting, and is that it's a human savior character, and its connection with 40, also with fish and baby fish, so the Leven. So we probably should stop it here, I'm thinking, because this is getting into more.
Yeah, let's do the alchemy. Well, okay, I think it'd be good to come back to this stuff after Noel has kind of talked with us. Let's do another episode kind of going over this stuff, and we can get into alchemy more. I think in that conversation, we can talk a bit about like why alchemy is important, and what it is why these things are happening. But maybe if there's anything you want to make sure that is there anything you wanted to like make sure we covered before we let this one conclude?
No, yeah, because it's a little. See, this is the problem.
It gets esoteric, but it also becomes technical, and so it requires a little explanation why it's practical. But I do think it is. I think we just need to talk with Noel about why every tradition, why alchemy is something that the British and the chemists, the German chemists, why everyone's obsessed with modernizing these Arabic traditions that actually go back to Africa and India and everywhere around the world. Right? China's doing this, India's doing this, and it's the most ancient tradition. Clearly might be older than us, right?
Exactly, yeah. So going back to the title of the presentation as a whole, is that it's the Shatapatha Brahmana, and that there's 100 pathways to kind of explain what it is, and there's no real entryway in it. You can start anywhere and you can end anywhere. The point is that you're trying to show the similarities enough for people to understand that, oh, this is how you look at it. So once you're able to get a clear view on what it is, then it's easier. Then I can go through some of the more detailed stuff. But until some of these things are explained, and that's the thing, is I don't know where the audience is at. I'm sure a lot of people are even bored with some of the stuff, or it was like, yeah, I already know all this. Like, this is nothing new, you know? And then some people are like, oh, I don't even understand what you're talking about. That doesn't make sense. So that's the hard part, is like getting everybody on at least a similar page, or kind of like bigger overview, and then diving into the details to prove them out. But also, I just want to strike up the conversation and let this be a longer term thing that we can keep diving into and looking into the details, because obviously life is not, even though it's kind of simple once you do understand it, life is not simple. There's too many details to kind of explain to really figure out what it is. And there is some aspects that I do want to get into, but the reason that I kind of steer away from it is because some of the things I know are a little bit difficult for people to swallow a little bit, and I don't want to just like rush into those things. And then there's some stuff that let's just say that I'm correct with my assumptions, that some of this stuff is really what's going on behind the scenes, is really the aims of some of these elites, right? Or all of them. this information can be a little bit volatile to release, because obviously if there's two sides, one's been hiding it, one's been trying to smear it or take it out and kill it, it's not good for either side if I'm sitting here explaining some of these details. So, if I want to serve my best duty to humanity and try to show some of these things, there is kind of a way to unfold it, and then there's bad ways to unfold it, because it could get to a point where it says too much, and then the powers that be will just do whatever they have powers beyond what we can believe, right? They can control all kinds of things, magical, including technological. So if things aren't unfolded and explained in a certain way at a certain time, the information itself becomes volatile, right? Just understanding how to run a nuclear plant, or what it uh, what you can do with household items to make a sticky bomb or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, there's all kinds of stuff. If you explain too much to people that won't handle the information, or that they feel that information will be used as a detriment to humanity, then they have all the rights in the world to step in and take people out. And I think that's why they have in the past some of this, like, free energy stuff and all that. The reason they're taking these people out is because there's too many people that would use it just for their own benefit, and it would hurt humanity as a whole, right? And there may be even timekeepers involved with all this stuff, right? Like they show in the Marvel movies and everything, where they're jumping through and they're correcting timelines and all that stuff. So just take that all into consideration, that this world is very dynamic, and there might be stuff that is uh could be very detrimental to humanity. So it needs to be unfolded at its right time and juncture, and with humans that are ready to take on those things. Because there's a lot of technology where I feel there's humans that will just take it and devastate each other with. And I agree that there needs to be someone, an overwatcher, that's stopping people from going too far. Because there's definitely, I mean, what would you say, Xerta? Do you think that there's technology at this point and juncture in time that can wipe out humanity?
I mean, yeah, but there always has been. I mean, it's just that we could also, we're pretty good at coming up with solutions to surviving. I think the problem is that what we consider survival, like I was just watching a documentary a bit on Russia, and it was interesting in the 40s, and even after the 40s, there was a period of mass starvation, and they were taking the food that they had only really ever given to prisoners in gulags and serving it whenever possible on their tables, because they'd run out of any ideas how to survive. And I think that's majorly impacted Russian cuisine in a lot of ways, because it was a very highly like, we don't think about it. There's a very fancy kind of food that they used to make, and then the Sovietism was to erase a lot of the bourgeoisie qualities, people that were interested in fancy things, but was not okay. So the quality of survival, we change our consciousness on such a level, and it changes everything about what we're able to perceive, or what we're looking for, or what we're driven by. I think all of that is thrown out the window, and can be controlled to have that.
Yeah. And I think humanity needs to be in a certain place, right? Psychologically, all these things, to be able to handle certain information and work well with each other. And obviously, in the system, the way that our societies are structured, there's a lot of stuff that I don't think is very healthy for humanity to take on while in this state, because we're too much pitted against each other, so there needs to be um you know a different mindset and a different society almost in place first, before certain aspects can be released. And I think that a lot of these elites see it that way, and this is what they're setting up for, and this is why they're trying to wipe out a lot of humanity, is because they just feel the easiest way is just to clean the fucking table, get rid of most people, and then they can implement this stuff and create the utopia on their own. But I always tell people, like, that kind of solution where there's going to be some kind of, complete wipeout, before these things are implemented.
I think
It's
a
probably,
the Planet of the Apes thing is the most likely thing, though. Like, more likely we end up in a lower form of potential than we are now. Like, and it's so easy to see how you could lose the opportunities that you have, right?
yeah,
I think that's actually more tragic in some ways than like the completion of existence. But yeah, even still, your death, or if there's a kind of, if life continues on without you, right? That's kind of a way to think of it too.
yeah. I mean, if I just think if there's characters that are willing to wipe out a good portion of humanity through biological
It took
weapons,
me so long to find this old
warfare,
meme.
things like that, right? That those characters starting a new existence that has all this higher technology and all these free energy things and everything is probably not going to be the best outcome for humanity. That you're not going to have, that's not a good start to restart things. So I
Right.
I I personally think that there's a possibility, and it would be ideal, obviously, if humanity really worked it out together and figured out how we can even things
Wouldn't it
out
be
and work
nice?
together. It would be nice, but see, that's the thing, is people don't think it's a possibility, and so most likely the outcome is going to be that we get reaped, and we're going to have a lot of people suffering and dying, and it's unfortunate, and it's not my wish. And so it seems like it's the wish of the masses, right? That really matters, and I don't have control over it. I wish I did. If it was my wish, then humanity would work it out and we would figure out how to work together. But it doesn't seem like that, because anytime I talk to people about this or ever try to even bring that up, it's that same response. Yeah, that'd be nice, but not going to happen in your lifetime. Well, we don't have any more lifetimes with what is happening. I don't
Yeah, I
think
think
we do.
that's the material reality incarnation is kind of coming to a energetic, I don't know if conclusion's the word, but like sort of resolution, sort of a energetic resolution, and then that I think is supposed to be more eternal than ever changing, you know, like a
Yeah,
being.
so it's almost like sayonara then, right? Because that's what it comes down. That's why I care less and less about coming up here and making a fool out of myself and having people hear my fucking voice and presenting myself or whatever, because it's almost like, okay, like if there's not gonna, it doesn't look like a very bright future for my children. It doesn't look like a very bright future even for myself, right? And I guess the rest of the generations, they can go eat fucking shit, because this is what everybody wants to do. They all want everybody to just eat shit rather than get along and make shit work. So there doesn't seem to be, once your back's against the wall, right? Then all you have left is the fight. And so that's the only thing that's left, and that's why I'm dedicating my life and my time to raising my family,
Yeah,
growing my business, and trying to talk to you guys through the pathways that I have, and just presenting this information and saying, like, look, this is what I see. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Chicken Little and the sky is falling a little bit, but it is. The sky is falling. And if we, and I've been telling people this for years, but obviously shit's hitting the fucking fan, and more shit is hitting people's face from that fan, and people are starting wondering, like, is that really shit? Yeah, that's shit. We're dealing with a lot of shit right now.
yeah,
And what do you think the outcome is going to be if you really are not burying your head in the sand and you're looking at this directly? You're going to see that this thing doesn't seem to want to stop, and it doesn't have anything stopping it. And what is the only way to stop it? I would say all of you should, and the rest of the humanity should sit down and think about this every night. Like, what is really going to fucking stop them from doing what they're going to do? They have the power to do what it is that they want to do. And who are they? And this is what I'm trying to get into in a lot of this presentation, is who they are. and what energy do they align with, and do they have the divine right to do what they're doing? And I think that they do. And the only way to stop them is not through trying to force them or beg them or anything. It's to prove that you pass the test. And that's the only way we're going to do it. And the only way we're going to pass the test is if we learn to work together, period. If you can give me a better solution than that, if you guys can come up with some sort of answer that would, figure out this riddle to the Sphinx, then I'm all ears. But this is what I will continue to come on to speak about, is the riddle and how to answer it. And this is how you get that cart to move. If not, it's going to get destroyed. Period. That's all I see on the horizon. If we don't move and we don't do the right things, we're going to get destroyed. This gateway is opening, and from all I see in the symbology and everything is, it's going to be an end. If we don't do it, it's either going to be an end of bad, and we can, there's pathways out of it, but they're not looking good, not at all. It's looking very, very dire.
I believe in the future. I believe we can make a better tomorrow. I believe time is on our side.
I do too.
X Church.
Universe grows, complexity's king. Humans play.
That was. See you guys next time.